Picture this, the most prestigious conference room in the known galaxy, where 17 different species of pompous aliens sit around a table made from crystallized starlight, sipping beverages that cost more than most planets' GDP. This is the Galactic Council, and today they're discussing their favorite topic, how absolutely primitive and barbaric humans are. Ambassador Quilbert Fluffington of the Pompous Feather People adjusts his ridiculous ceremonial hat. Seriously, this thing has more plumes than a Vegas showgirl, and clears his throat with the kind of authority that only comes from never having worked a real job in your life. Esteemed colleagues, Quilbert begins, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension usually reserved for explaining quantum physics to houseplants. We have reached a crisis point with the human situation. The other ambassadors nod sagely, their various tentacles, eye stalks, and other appendages bobbing in agreement. These are beings who measure their civilization by how many centuries they can spend debating the philosophical implications of a single trade agreement. He's humans, continues Ambassador Glorbnox the Eternally Wise, whose species once spent 400 years in committee deciding whether purple was a color. They solved disputes with something called violence. Can you imagine? They actually expect problems to be resolved within their own lifetimes. A collective gasp echoes through the chamber. The horror. I've reviewed their historical records, adds Serenity Moonbeam, from the Crystal Harmony Collective, a species so peaceful they apologize to their food before eating it. They have something called wars that last mere decades instead of the proper millennium minimum. It's barbaric. Quilbert's feathers ruffle with righteous indignation. Which brings us to today's solution. We shall invite these humans to participate in our annual intergalactic conflict resolution tournament. When they inevitably fail to grasp the sophisticated nuances of proper, civilized discourse, the entire galaxy will witness their primitive nature. The rules of the tournament are beautifully simple, at least according to alien logic. 3 challenges designed to showcase the highest forms of galactic civilization. Diplomatic negotiation, where problems are solved through careful discussion lasting several geological ages. Military tactical excellence, where battles are fought with honor, dignity, and enough ceremony to make a royal wedding look like a quick lunch. And finally, planetary conquest scenarios, approached with the kind of respectful restraint that ensures everyone gets a fair turn and nobody's feelings get hurt. The humans will undoubtedly embarrass themselves, Quilbert declares with the confidence of someone who has never met a human, and finally learn their place in the civilized galaxy. The vote is unanimous. Because that's what happens when your entire political system is designed by beings who think conflict should be resolved through interpretive dance and strongly worded letters. What they don't realize, of course, is that they're about to learn a very important lesson about making assumptions. Specifically, the lesson about what happens when you invite the species that invented the concept of total war to a friendly competition. But hey, they'll figure that out soon enough. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy on a dingy space station that smells perpetually of engine grease and questionable coffee, Captain Rex, Bulldozer Thompson, is having what he would generously call a day. Rex earned his nickname not through any particular fondness for construction equipment, but because his approach to problem-solving tends to involve going straight through obstacles, rather than around them. Picture a guy who looks like he was carved out of granite by someone who only had a chainsaw and a rough idea of what humans were supposed to look like. Rex spent 15 years hauling cargo through the most dangerous shipping lanes in known space, which is basically a PhD in how to not die when everything is trying to kill you. He's currently staring at an official-looking hologram that materializes in his cramped quarters with all the pomp and circumstance of a tax audit. The message is delivered by some alien with more tentacles than a sushi restaurant, speaking in the kind of flowery diplomatic language that makes insurance policies sound like poetry. What in the ever-loving hell, Rex mutters, scratching his stubble, is an intergalactic conflict resolution tournament, and why does it sound like something designed by people who've never been in an actual conflict? Before he can delete the message and get back to his breakfast of coffee that could strip paint and rations that technically qualify as food, his door chimes with the arrival of his new liaison. Enter Pip Squeaksworth, a member of the Flibbert species, who stands about 3 feet tall and looks like someone crossed a hamster with a filing cabinet. Pip is practically vibrating with excitement, clutching a briefcase full of forms, regulations, and what appears to be a 47-page code of conduct. His species evolved bureaucracy instead of opposable thumbs, which explains a lot about galactic politics. "Captain Thompson," Pip squeaks, his voice hitting frequencies that make Rex's coffee mug ring like a tuning fork. "I am so incredibly honored to be working with humanity's representative. I've read all 17 volumes of the tournament guidelines, and I simply cannot wait to witness your species' unique approach to civilized conflict resolution. Rex looks at this furry little ball of enthusiasm and feels something die inside his soul. Kid, he says slowly, I think you might be disappointed. See, when humans have a conflict, our approach is usually less civilized discussion and more fix it fast before someone dies. Pip's whiskers twitched with delight. Oh, how wonderfully primitive. I mean, charmingly direct. This is going to be such an educational experience. Rex drains his coffee and contemplates whether it's too late to fake his own death. 3 days later, Rex finds himself in what can only be described as the galaxy's most pretentious arena. Think Roman Colosseum, but designed by aliens who think subtlety is a 4-letter word. The seats are filled with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to watch humanity embarrass itself on an intergalactic stage. The first challenge is announced with enough fanfare to launch a small moon. Diplomatic negotiation simulation. The scenario involves a border dispute between 2 fictional planets over mining rights to an asteroid field. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Rex watches in growing amazement as the other participants unveil their strategies. The Serene Wisdom Collective presents a 14-phase negotiation process that begins with a ceremonial exchange of philosophical poetry and ends sometime around the heat death of the universe. The Crystal Harmony people suggest a meditation retreat, where all parties spend several decades contemplating the spiritual significance of rocks. Then there are the Eternal Deliberation Society members, who propose forming a committee to study the formation of a subcommittee to investigate the possibility of maybe eventually thinking about scheduling preliminary discussions about potentially considering the dispute. Fascinating approaches, announces the tournament moderator, a floating jellyfish creature whose voice sounds like wind chimes having an existential crisis. And now, humanity's representative. Rex stands up, walks to the podium, and clears his throat. Right, so you've got 2 groups fighting over rocks in space. Here's what you do. Ask them nicely to share. If they say no, remind them that sharing is better than having their mining equipment accidentally explode. If they still say no, well, mining equipment is surprisingly fragile around plasma cannons. The arena falls silent. You could hear a pin drop, if pins made sounds in the vacuum of space. But, stammers Ambassador Quilbert, his feathers practically molting from shock. What about the proper ceremonial protocols? The philosophical discussions about the nature of ownership? The careful consideration of each party's emotional relationship with the disputed territory? Rex shrugs. Look, Feathers, at the end of the day, either people share the rocks, or nobody gets any rocks. Everything else is just expensive stalling. Within 30 minutes, Rex has solved not only the simulation scenario, but also 3 actual ongoing border disputes that the Council had been debating for the past century. His methodology involves what he calls aggressive common sense, and what the aliens are starting to recognize as terrifying efficiency. Pip Squeaksworth is taking frantic notes, his whiskers twitching with what might be excitement or the early stages of a nervous breakdown. Incredible, he squeaks. You've reduced a complex geopolitical situation to its basic logical components and implemented a solution based on practical outcomes rather than ceremonial significance. Kid, Rex says, patting the little alien on what might be a shoulder, that's just Tuesday where I come from. The other participants are staring at Rex like he just performed dark magic, which, from their perspective, he basically did. After all, these are species that consider it rude to solve a problem in less time than it takes a star to form. The second challenge arrives with even more pomp than the first, because apparently when you're dealing with aliens who think subtlety is overrated, the solution is always more glitter and floating crystals. The moderator's voice takes on the reverent tone usually reserved for religious ceremonies or insurance commercials. Behold, the Military Tactical Excellence Examination. Participants will demonstrate their species' approach to honorable combat through strategic brilliance and adherence to the sacred codes of warfare. Rex raises his hand. Quick question, what exactly is a sacred code of warfare? The arena gasps. Literally gasps. Some alien in the back faints. Ambassador Glorbnox the Eternally Wise rises with the dignity of someone who has never had to duck incoming fire. The sacred codes, primitive human, are the fundamental principles that separate civilized warfare from mere barbarism. Honor before victory. Ceremony before action. Proper notice must be given before any engagement, including a formal declaration of intent, a waiting period for the opponent to prepare their ceremonial battle attire, and a mutual agreement on which rules of engagement will be observed. Right. Rex says slowly. And how long does this usually take? The pre-battle ceremonies alone require a minimum of 6 months, replies Serenity Moonbeam proudly. We find that proper anticipation enhances the spiritual significance of the conflict. Rex looks at Pip, who is scribbling notes with the intensity of someone documenting the discovery of fire. They spend half a year getting ready for a fight? It's considered terribly rude to surprise someone with violence, Pip explains helpfully. The galactic standards clearly state that all participants must have adequate time to compose their death poems, arrange for the care of their offspring, and select appropriately dramatic final words. The other participants begin their presentations, and Rex quickly realizes he's entered some kind of alternate dimension where warfare is performed by people who have clearly never been punched in the face. The Crystalline Warriors demonstrate something they call the Dance of Inevitable Victory, which involves approximately 47 elaborate formations, each requiring perfect synchronization and ceremonial music. Their battles, they explain with obvious pride, often last several years and are judged on artistic merit as much as tactical effectiveness. The Feathered Legion of Honor presents their strategy of gentlemanly combat, where opposing forces exchange formal challenges, agree on battlefield boundaries, and take regular breaks for refreshments. Casualties are kept to a polite minimum, and surrender is accepted only after proper paperwork has been filed in triplicate. Then there are the Philosophical Warriors, who spend most of their battles debating whether violence is ever truly justified, while their enemies politely wait for the discussion to conclude. Rex watches all this with the expression of someone who has just discovered that his new neighbors are completely insane. Finally, it's his turn. Okay, he begins, walking to the center of the arena like he's about to explain basic math to particularly slow children. So you people think warfare is supposed to be fair? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. And you believe in giving your enemies time to prepare? More nodding. And you have rules about what weapons you can use, when you can use them, and how politely you have to ask permission first. The enthusiasm is palpable. These aliens are clearly pleased that this primitive human is finally understanding civilization. Rex grins, and for the first time since this whole thing started, it's not a particularly nice grin. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The arena goes dead silent. See, where I come from, we have a different philosophy about fighting. It's called winning. The point isn't to have a fair fight. The point is to make sure the other guy can't fight back. You don't give warnings, because warnings give enemies time to shoot you first. And you definitely don't take breaks for snacks when someone is trying to kill you. Pip's note-taker has devolved into frantic scribbling. His whiskers are no longer twitching with excitement. They're twitching with what looks suspiciously like terror. Rex continues, warming to his theme. You want to know about human military tactics? Fine. First rule, cheat. If you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. Second rule, there are no second chances in a real fight, so you better make the first one count. Third rule, psychological warfare is half the battle. Make your enemy so scared of you that they surrender before you have to waste ammunition. The floating jellyfish moderator makes a sound like a deflating balloon. But surely you have some concept of honor in combat. Honor is for people who survive the fight, Rex replies cheerfully. Dead honorable people are still dead. We have a saying, all warfare is based on deception. We also have another saying, if you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics suck. Ambassador Quilbert's feathers are now molting so rapidly he looks like he's going through a very stressful pillow fight. This is barbarism. What about the dignity of combat? The nobility of the warrior's path? Rex shrugs. We tried nobility once. Then we invented machine guns. Turns out bullets don't care about your noble intentions. By the time Rex finishes explaining concepts like total war, scorched earth tactics, and mutually assured destruction, half the alien participants have requested medical attention and the other half are seriously reconsidering their species' foreign policy decisions. Pip Squeaksworth has stopped taking notes entirely and is now just staring at Rex with the wide-eyed expression of someone who has just realized they're sharing a room with a friendly but potentially explosive device. By the time the third and final challenge is announced, the atmosphere in the arena has shifted from smug anticipation to something resembling a disaster preparedness drill. Several alien species have quietly excused themselves, claiming sudden diplomatic emergencies back home. Others are huddled together, whispering frantically about updating their planetary defense systems. The moderator's voice now carries the forced cheer of someone trying to maintain normalcy while their world crumbles around them. And now, esteemed participants, we arrive at our most prestigious challenge, the planetary conquest scenario. Demonstrate your species' approach to territorial expansion and the establishment of interstellar civilization. Rex notices that Ambassador Quilbert has developed a nervous tic where his left eye twitches every time someone says the word human. This is going to be fun. The remaining participants step forward with significantly less confidence than before. The crystalline warriors, still recovering from Rex's previous presentation, nervously explain their approach to planetary expansion. A careful, centuries-long process involving extensive cultural exchange, mutual consent agreements, and the establishment of shared artistic colonies. We believe, their representative stammers, shooting worried glances at Rex, that true conquest means winning hearts and minds through the beauty of our crystalline architecture and the harmony of our synchronized dancing. The Eternal Deliberation Society presents their method, forming exploration committees that spend decades studying potential planets, followed by diplomatic missions that establish formal relationships with indigenous populations. Their expansion rate, they admit with obvious pride, averages one new colony every 400 years. Quality over quantity, their ambassador explains defensively. We prefer sustainable, consensual growth that respects the autonomy of all involved parties. Even the philosophical warriors seem subdued as they describe their approach, engaging in deep intellectual discourse with planetary populations to determine whether territorial expansion aligns with universal moral principles. Most of their potential conquests end with everyone agreeing that conquest is wrong, and then writing thoughtful essays about it. Rex watches all this with growing amusement. These beings have clearly never heard the phrase manifest destiny, and they're about to get a crash course in human history that will haunt their nightmares for generations. When his turn arrives, Rex doesn't walk to the podium. He swaggers. There's a difference, and everyone in the arena can feel it. Right, he begins, cracking his knuckles in a way that makes several aliens flinch. Planetary conquest. You people want to know how humans do territorial expansion? Buckle up, because this is going to get educational. Pip has gone completely still except for his whiskers, which are now vibrating at frequencies that suggest imminent psychological collapse. So, couple thousand years ago, Rex continues conversationally, we figured out that if you want something someone else has, you can just take it. Novel concept, I know. We called it conquest, and we got really, really good at it. He begins pacing, warming to his subject like a professor delivering a favorite lecture to students who can't leave. Take my ancestors, the Europeans. Beautiful continents, those, but they heard there were other continents out there, full of people who had different colored skin and unfamiliar customs, so naturally, they decided these people needed some European-style civilization, by force if necessary. The arena is so quiet you could hear a space dust particle hit the floor. Bailey showed up with guns, diseases, and the absolute certainty that their way of life was superior. When the locals objected, well, that's what the guns were for. Within a few centuries, they'd claimed entire continents, displaced millions of people, and established global empires that lasted for hundreds of years. Ambassador Quilbert makes a sound like a deflating balloon filled with existential dread. But that's just the appetizer, Rex continues cheerfully. Let's talk about what we called world wars. See, we got so good at conquest that we started fighting each other over who got to conquer what, twice. The second time we invented weapons that could literally erase cities from existence. Not capture them, not negotiate with them, just poof, gone. Hundreds of thousands of people, deleted from reality, in a matter of seconds. Several aliens in the audience are now openly weeping. And that was with primitive technology, Rex adds helpfully. These days we have something called nuclear weapons that make those look like firecrackers. We built enough of them to destroy our entire planet several times over, just to make sure nobody else could conquer us first. Pip Squeaksworth is now rocking back and forth, clutching his briefcase like a security blanket. Oh, but here's the really fun part, Rex says, his grin widening. We didn't stop there. We looked at our own planet and thought, you know what? This isn't enough space. So we started planning how to conquer other worlds. Mars, the moon, wherever. We're already working on the technology to turn entire planets into human colonies, whether the current residents like it or not. The floating jellyfish moderator has turned an alarming shade of transparency. Surely, it whispers, surely your species has learned the value of peaceful coexistence. Rex laughs, and it's not a reassuring sound. Peace? We've been at peace for what, maybe 30 years total in our entire recorded history? We're currently running something like 40 different armed conflicts on our own planet right now. We have professional soldiers whose full-time job is figuring out new and creative ways to kill people we've never met. He pauses for effect, scanning the increasingly horrified faces in the arena. But here's the thing that really separates us from you folks, Rex continues, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing a trade secret. We don't conquer for honor or glory or philosophical reasons. We conquer because we want stuff. Resources, territory, strategic advantages. And when we want something, we don't spend centuries debating whether we deserve it. We just take it. Ambassador Quilbert has now completely stopped molting, mainly because he appears to have run out of feathers. His voice comes out as a barely audible squeak. But what about the rights of indigenous populations? The preservation of native cultures? The moral implications of territorial expansion? Rex looks at him with the patient expression of someone explaining basic physics to a particularly slow goldfish. Look, Feathers, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's what we do. You asked about human approaches to planetary conquest, and I'm giving you the honest answer. We show up, we assess the local military capabilities, and then we decide whether it's easier to negotiate or just start shooting. Usually we start with shooting because it saves time. The arena has now achieved a level of silence usually reserved for deep space or the inside of black holes. Several species are frantically updating their diplomatic protocols on their personal devices. The beautiful thing, Rex adds, apparently oblivious to the collective nervous breakdown he's causing, is that we're really efficient at it. No centuries of preparation, no ceremonial declarations, no artistic competitions. We identify what we want, we figure out how to take it, and then we take it. Simple. Pip Squeaksworth has begun what can only be described as stress grooming, frantically cleaning his whiskers while muttering something that sounds like prayers to various flibbert deities. Any questions? Rex asks brightly. The silence stretches on until it becomes uncomfortable, then passes through uncomfortable and arrives at existentially terrifying. The tournament scoring system, designed by beings who thought the most challenging mathematical concept was counting to 17 without using tentacles, simply wasn't prepared for Rex Thompson. When the results are calculated, the quantum processors responsible for tabulating scores actually experience what can only be described as a mechanical nervous breakdown. Rex has won all 3 challenges by margins so overwhelming that the system initially assumes there's been a computational error. When the backup systems confirm the results, the scoring algorithm attempts to divide by 0, crashes spectacularly, and has to be replaced with something that's essentially an abacus, run by a very confused intern. The announcement of humanity's victory is delivered by the floating jellyfish moderator, whose voice now carries the hollow quality of someone who has seen too much and slept too little. By unanimous decision of the quantum scoring matrix, before its tragic malfunction, humanity has achieved total victory in all categories. The arena erupts in what can charitably be called enthusiastic panic. Representatives from 17 species simultaneously activate their emergency diplomatic protocols, which apparently involve a lot of frantic tentacle waving and high-pitched squeaking. Ambassador Quilbert, now completely bald and twitching like a broken servo motor, approaches Rex with the cautious movements of someone trying not to startle a sleeping predator. His voice comes out as a barely audible whisper. Captain Thompson, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I would like to formally apologize for any previous characterizations of your species as primitive. Rex raises an eyebrow. Oh, now we're not primitive? Primitive? Quilbert laughs, and it's the laugh of someone whose sanity has left the building and forgotten to leave a forwarding address. Primitive? Captain, your species has weaponized efficiency. You've turned warfare into a science and conquest into an art form. We thought we were dealing with barbarians, but you're not barbarians. We're what? Rex asks, genuinely curious. You're monsters, Pip Squeaksworth whispers from behind his briefcase, which he's now using as a shield. Beautiful, terrifying, efficient monsters who solve problems by making them go away permanently. Rex considers this assessment with the thoughtful expression of someone who's just been told their cooking is interesting. Huh, I guess when you put it that way, we probably seem pretty intense. The emergency session of the Galactic Council that follows makes legislative history by passing 17 new laws in under 4 hours, which is roughly 16 hours and 59 minutes faster than their previous record. The legislation collectively becomes known as the Please Don't Anger the Humans Treaty, though its official title is much longer and involves several words that don't translate properly into human languages. Key provisions include immediate reclassification of humanity from primitive warmongers to strategic partners whose friendship we value deeply, the establishment of a new diplomatic post called Director of Not Getting on Humanity's Bad Side, and the creation of an emergency fund specifically for buying humans things they might want, instead of letting them take those things by force. Rex finds himself promoted from reluctant tournament participant to galactic peace through superior firepower advisor, a position that comes with an impressive salary, unlimited travel expenses, and a staff of alien assistants whose primary job is to make sure he's never bored enough to suggest improving galactic civilization. The most significant change, however, is philosophical. The Galactic Council's approach to conflict resolution undergoes what historians will later call the Great Efficiency Revolution. Diplomatic negotiations that previously took centuries are now resolved in weeks. Border disputes are settled through what becomes known as the Thompson method. Ask nicely once, then explain in detail what will happen if everyone doesn't play nicely. Serenity Moonbeam of the Crystal Harmony Collective, when asked about these changes, responds with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who has seen the future and found it both terrifying and remarkably effective. We've learned that sometimes the most peaceful solution is making sure everyone understands the alternative. 6 months later, Rex sits in his new office aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, reviewing reports that show interstellar conflicts at an all-time low. Pip Squeaksworth, now his permanent assistant and displaying signs of what his species calls productive paranoia, bustles around, organizing files with the manic energy of someone who has found purpose in preventing galactic catastrophe. "Captain," Pip squeaks, his whiskers twitching with what might be excitement or residual trauma. "The Crystalline Warriors have agreed to the Mining Rights Treaty. The Eternal Deliberation Society has settled their territorial dispute with the Philosophical Warriors, and 3 different species have proactively offered tribute in exchange for continued human friendship." His wide face is now controlled with confusion. Rex leans back in his chair, a piece of furniture designed to accommodate beings with vastly different anatomical requirements and therefore roughly as comfortable as sitting on a collection of geometric shapes. "You know what the funny thing is, Pip?" "What's that, Captain?" "They still don't get it. They think we're some kind of hyper-advanced warrior race that conquered our way across the galaxy through superior firepower and tactical brilliance." Pip's whiskers stop twitching. "Aren't you?" Rex grins, and after all this time, Pip still finds that grin mildly terrifying. "Kid, we're not warriors. We're just really, really impatient. All that stuff about human military history and conquest? That's just what happens when you give a species with short attention spans enough time to get bored and start looking around for something interesting to do." He gestures toward the view screen showing the peaceful, efficiently managed galaxy beyond. "The difference between us and them isn't that we're better at fighting. It's that we actually want problems to get solved. When something's broken, we fix it. When someone's causing trouble, we make them stop. When there's a job that needs doing, we do it." Pip considers this with the careful attention of someone whose understanding of the universe has been repeatedly shattered and rebuilt over the past several months. "So humans aren't actually uniquely violent." "Oh, we're plenty violent when we need to be," Rex clarifies cheerfully. "But mostly, we're just practical. These aliens spend so much time thinking about problems that they forget to actually solve them. We skip the thinking part and jump straight to the solving part." He pauses, watching a convoy of alien ships carefully maintaining their distance from the human diplomatic vessel. "They wanted to teach us about civilized conflict resolution. Turns out what they really needed was someone to teach them that the most civilized thing you can do is make sure conflicts get resolved quickly before they turn into bigger problems." Pip makes a note in his ever-present briefcase. "Should I include that in my report to the Council?" "Nah," Rex says, putting his feet up on his desk and causing 3 different alien safety protocols to activate. "Let them figure it out on their own. Besides, I think they're starting to like having problems that actually get solved for once." Outside the viewport, the galaxy continues its newly efficient rotation, and somewhere in the distance, Ambassador Quilbert is probably still molting from stress. But for the first time in galactic history, everyone's problems are getting solved in a reasonable time frame, and nobody's quite sure whether to be grateful or terrified about it. Rex figures that's probably the most human outcome possible, leaving everyone else confused about whether they should thank him or run away screaming, while simultaneously making their lives significantly better through the application of weaponized common sense. And honestly, that's exactly how he likes it.